Hola, hola mi gente. ¿Cómo estás, Eric?
Muy bien, Celeste, muchas gracias. ¿Tú cómo estás?
Bien, bien. Pues gracias por sintonizarnos otra vez esta noche para una edición especial de Informados y Conectados. Vamos a estar otra vez transmitiendo en vivo para el Foro de Candidatos y esta noche vamos a estar otra vez en el Centro Cultural de Round Lake. Todavía se pueden llegar, si quieren venir o están en camino, invitar a la comadre y vamos a estar escuchando de dos candidatos que se están postulando para la primaria demócrata del Distrito 31 del estado de Illinois. Brevemente vamos a empezar, van a estar dando la información y Eric, cuéntanos cómo pueden ver la captura de todos los.
Claro que sí, Celeste. Pueden entrar a la configuración de Facebook. Ahí en la parte de arriba aparece un icono pequeño con dos letras S adentro, en el cual le pueden dar clic y pueden ver los subtítulos ahí activados. Les pueden dar los subtítulos en inglés, pero también pueden hacer sus configuraciones y cambiarlo a español. También pueden ver nuestro canal de YouTube. Vamos a estar también transmitiendo nuestro canal de YouTube. Compártalo también con todas las personas que se pueden beneficiar, porque como platicábamos ayer, es tu voz, es tu voto, y este tipo de eventos son precisamente para que la comunidad se dé a conocer y dé sus opiniones a las personas que nos van a representar, ¿verdad, Celeste?
Sí, exactamente. Ya saben, aquí vamos a estar y vamos a también terminar con un poco de comentario. Hoy va a ser un poco más breve porque solamente tenemos a dos candidatos y vamos a dejar que empiece el programa.
Hello. I'd like to welcome you today to the primary candidate forum for the Democratic race for Illinois Senate District 31. My name is Jean Kirby, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters for Northwest Lake County. It is my great pleasure to introduce the organizations and members of the forming committee working to give voters in our area an opportunity to meet and question the candidates running for Senate. The League of Women Voters, Northwest Lake County, representing the Grace Lake, Round Lake area, are Tracy Reckler and of course myself. Mano a Mano Family Resource members are Celeste Flores, Eric Yanez, and Guadalupe Bueno. Mariposas Women's Collective member is Hema Mariscal. Round Lake Area Public Library is represented by Cheryl Clark, and members from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, Lake County branch, are Dr. Sandra LeConte and Stella Jones. Please take a minute to learn about these organizations. There is information out in the lobby, and consider if you'd like to have more information from any of these organizations. I want to also thank Avon Township for offering voter registration services for the evening, as well as information on how to register to vote online, how to request online our mail-in ballots. And in addition, we have students here helping us with every aspect of the event from Round Lake High School. Our language interpreters this evening are from DuPage Federation. And we also have, for this evening's event, WILR, who is live reporting this event on the radio. Clearly, it takes a village to do something like this for our citizens. To prepare for this event, we looked for the contested races, and that would be where there was more than one candidate that was running from a particular party for a particular position. All the candidates were contacted through information provided by the Lake County Clerk's Office, and when they filled out their petitions, we took that information as well. Any candidate that did not reply through email or phone calls, we mailed a certified packet to inform them of the event and all the necessary forms in order to participate. This is a busy time for candidates, and not all the candidates could participate. For this evening, we did invite Republican candidates for Lake County Board District 2, and they've expressed their regrets for not being able to attend. The main purpose is to introduce you to our moderator for this evening. She will be reviewing the rules for the event and the protocols for the evening. And we'll be asking the candidates the questions collected from the audience. And the students that are in the back of the room will look for, have cards that they will give you if you'd like one. And if you just raise your hand, they'll collect the cards. The moderator for this evening is Carol Russ. Moderator Carol Russ is a member of the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff Area League of Women Voters. She has been active in the league for a quarter of a century and is a former president. Her governmental service includes many years on both the Plan Commission and the Architectural Review Board in Lake Bluff. She was also central to instituting the nominating process for the local candidates in Lake Bluff. With that, please welcome the highly respected and dearly sought Carol Russ.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and welcome to everybody. It's always nice to be in a room of civic-minded people. And I have our first questions coming up right now, but I'd like to say again, we love audience questions. They're the best. So if you need a card, just wave your hand and the card will be brought to you. If your card is filled out, just wave the card and it will be picked up from you. Super easy. And we really appreciate the way you participate in an event like this. We depend on your questions. So thank you very much for participating in that tonight. We would like to ask that you do not do any taping or filming in this event. It's not fair to the candidates to pull a soundbite out of it and reuse it in a different context. We are live streaming, which is absolutely wonderful on Facebook. We're also being broadcast on WRLR, so we hope there are lots of people out there listening. All the candidates tonight that are participating completed a candidate agreement, so we have some ground rules to work with here. They've both agreed to them, and that's how we'll proceed. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And then we go to the questions, which are 1 minute and 30 seconds, and they'll each have an answer each have a chance to answer the very same question. We'll alternate who takes the question first, who does the second respondent, and then we will close with statements from the candidates again that they've had some time to prepare and put their best issues forward for you. So we are ready to begin, and our first order of business is to introduce our candidates. We have here with us tonight Mary Edley Allen and Sam Yingling, and they will proceed in that order first, which is alphabetical order. You have my sympathies, Mr. Yingling. I'm sure you are. So you're very welcome to come up here and present, or sit there and use the microphone that's at the table, whatever you prefer. But Mary Edley Allen will speak first. Sorry.
Testing. Okay. Great. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Northwest Lake County, to Round Lake Area Library, Mariposas Women's Coalition. I see a lot of young women that are volunteering tonight, and to Mano a Mano for hosting this evening. It's extremely important as a teacher that we get the facts out and that voters make educated decisions when they go to the ballot box. So my name is Mary Edley Allen, and I have worked, served, and been in this district for over 20 years. I am a single mom. I have 4 sons, and I work 2 jobs because I need to make ends meet. One of my jobs is to be a full-time teacher, elementary school teacher. Yo enseño los niños que hablan 2 idiomas. Yo aprendí mi español cuando yo viví en Chile por un año. Cuando yo tenía 16 años, hace mucho tiempo. But I also teach adults English at night at Mundelein High School. And it was when Trump was elected in office that propelled me to run for office for the first time. I saw how his awful immigration policies were really affecting my immigrant families, and I needed to do more to protect them. So I ran for office, and when I served in the House, one of my proudest moments was protecting a woman's right to choose. The Reproductive Health Act passed in the House. I was one of 10 female women legislators that were instrumental in getting that piece of legislation passed. So a woman's right to choose is protected here in Illinois, regardless of what happens with Roe versus Wade. I am I have many proud moments as a state representative, but I am a single mom of 4 sons, working 2 jobs. I have the experience, the leadership, and the hard work ethic to serve as your state senator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lincoln. A 2-minute introductory statement, please.
Sure. My name is Sam Yingling. I am the state representative for the 62nd District, which makes up about 50% of the 31st Senate District. I am the only openly LGBTQ legislator outside of Chicago. And before we start, I just want to thank the League of Women Voters and all of the organizations for putting on this forum. It's incredibly important to the voters, it's incredibly important to the candidates, and most importantly, it's incredibly important to our Congress. I've been a lifelong resident of Lake County, and I've lived in the district my whole life. I grew up here. My parents actually owned a small family restaurant just down the street from where we're at, and we've been here for multiple generations and have always been engaged in the community. In fact, my late grandmother was the reason I originally ran for public office. In her 80s, property taxes had risen to such a point where she had to go get a part-time job just to pay her property taxes. And being a product of her generation, she refused support from the family. And at that point, I knew that I needed to take action. I ran for Avon Township Supervisor with the commitment that I would reduce the tax levies while in office, and I was successful in reducing the property tax levies in Avon Township by 22% without cutting services. But during that same period of time, the LGBTQ community was fighting for its rights and, quite frankly, fighting for its lives. State by state were amending their constitutions to enshrine hatred, bigotry, and discrimination into their constitutions. And we in Illinois had the opportunity to pass civil unions, which would have provided some basic legal rights to LGBTQ couples. At that time, I met with our state representative, and explained to her the reason and the need for her to vote in favor of this. And I explained that it was time that we adopt civil unions. And she looked me right in the eye and she said, "Sam, you're gonna have to do better than that." And so it was at that very moment that I said, I will do better than that. And I ran for state representative. And at that time, nobody thought that I could win. And especially nobody thought that an openly gay candidate could win against a multi-term Republican incumbent, especially in central western Lake County. And I was so honored to be the first LGBTQ elected legislator outside the city of Chicago. And I know how to fight. I look forward to continuing to fight for the district, and I am happy to be here, and I thank you all so much for your help and support.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We do have timers in the back, and the system in the back is that we will see green light, which means go ahead. Yellow means that you have 30 seconds left, and red, of course, means stop. We hope you'll finish your sentence when it's time to stop. And I will try and watch. And we'll try and be fair to everybody and give you the same amount of time on every question. So we're ready to begin with the questions. So our first responder will be Mary Allen. And the question I have for you is, our area has unique issues that need a strong voice. What do you intend to do to assure that your voice and thoughts are actively imparted in any discussion and action during your term of office?
It's a really great question, and it goes parallel with how I have to be a strong voice and advocate for my immigrant students. Every day I have to advocate for them with the teachers and administration and just fellow students in general. I had to learn how to have a strong voice because, frankly, no offense, but women tend to not get the time or the space that they need. So I learned how to stick out my elbows, put my feet firmly planted down. I have no fear. I spoke up strongly against Speaker Madigan when he was had the allegations against him about ComEd. I told him I would not vote for him for speaker, and I lost my funding after I mentioned that. So we need to take up our space, and especially as women, and just be strong. But I do believe power needs to be different. It should not be this hitting your head with a stick. It needs to be more collaborative, and power needs to look way different than it has in the past. We need to have every stakeholder at the table when decisions are made, and we need to be respectful to hear everyone's voice. I heard once that legislators or politicians in general should speak less and talk less and listen more, so I'm going to pass the mic.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Yingling. Same question.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Certainly. It says, our area has unique issues that need a strong voice. What do you intend to do to assure that your voice and thoughts are actively imparted in any discussion and action during the term of office?
As I was saying in my opening statement, is that being a member of the LGBTQ community can be very challenging. We face discrimination on an ongoing basis. It has definitely gotten better over the years. But 10 years ago, when I was elected to the General Assembly as the only openly LGBTQ legislator outside of Chicago, I learned very, very quickly that the voice that I was using to advocate for LGBTQ rights was the same voice I needed to use to advocate for the 62nd district in Springfield. Because nobody, if you don't speak up, you're not going to be heard. And that is something that I take to heart every day. I use my life experiences knowing that you have to have a strong, committed voice to be able to appropriately advocate for your district and bring the resources back that are necessary. Recently, just at the beginning of this session, I used my voice to call out systemic corruption within Springfield. And I, along with 18 of my colleagues, came together to stop Mike Madigan from getting reelected speaker. We were commonly referred to as the 19. We withstood enormous amounts of political pressure, not only from our colleagues, but from party leadership and from external interests. And that is the type of voice that we need in Springfield. We need that history of somebody who is not afraid to speak up and speak up for their constituents. And that is the voice I will be for the constituents of the Senate district.
Great, thank you very much. And we have a new question, and Sam Yingling will be the first responder to this question. What are the key factors you would consider in addressing property tax or income tax reform for Illinois?
That's a great question. We can't discuss property tax reform without discussing our over-reliance of education funding on property taxes. Illinois has shifted education costs to property taxpayers for decades. In the 1990s, the state began to reduce its investment in education, the amount of money that the state was providing, and that has put an increasing burden on property taxpayers that is unsustainable, and it's just unfair. Property taxes are not based upon one's ability to pay, and we need to restructure our tax code to something that is fair and equitable, and it's based upon a person's ability to pay. We have to start by adopting a progressive income tax. That is the largest taxing mechanism that exists in order to transition education funding away from property taxes. And then we also have to continue the diversification of our tax code to expand and have a proper reflection of what the state's economy actually is, which is a service-based economy. Our current tax code is built around an industrial manufacturing economy that simply does not exist anymore. Our surrounding states figured this out decades ago, and they modified their tax codes to reflect a service-based economy. Illinois has yet to do that, and we have to do that as one of the first steps to address our systemic property tax problem.
Thank you. The same question to Mary Edley Allen. What would you do about property tax or income tax reform?
On the doors, this is one of the issues that I hear all the time about our high property taxes. And I have real solutions, and I think that's what we need, not some gimmicks about certain things that we're going to do, but real things, real possible solutions. There are two areas that I would really like to focus on. We need to stop tax giveaways to large businesses. It's the really unsexy language is called TIFs. TIF law was created in the 70s for economic development, and the laws have not been tightened up since the 1990s. There is an overuse of TIFs. Walmart that was used to be on the corner of 83 and Rollins Road was in a TIFs district, meaning that their property taxes were frozen for 23 years. When it expired, what did Walmart do? They moved. Walmart does not need a tax break. They need to be paying their fair share, especially when they have 5 family members that are valued over $200 billion. Another area is that we need more money to come into our schools. So I do agree with restructuring our tax to a more progressive tax. We're one of only 7 states that still has the regressive flat tax, and that would increase some of the funding coming from the very, very wealthy and then go into our schools. But I will say, we do love our strong school system. I know I stayed in Lake County and in the district to raise my 4 sons because of the excellent public schools.
Thank you for that answer. And we'll start now with a new question, and Mary Lee Ellen will be the first respondent on this question. Civil discourse and compromise are necessary to meet the expectations of your constituents. What steps will you personally take to reduce political polarization?
Not only will I take steps, I have taken steps, and I have always led my life by example. My first bill when I was in the House, I went and spoke to every single Republican and every single Democrat because I wanted it to be unanimous. I wanted to be able to come back to my district and say, see, bipartisanship is alive and well. It just takes a lot of work. It takes explaining what your bill is and understanding where your counterparts are coming from. We frankly need to have more discussions. We need to start to talk to people that we disagree with and listen to what they have to say. If we don't start to have a civil discourse, we're going to be doomed. You know, people say that we have been through worse times, but frankly, we just need to start listening to each other, and it starts as living an example of what you would like to see. And I always like to quote Michelle Obama's, when people go low, we go high.
Thank you. I'd like to pose the same question to Sam Yingling. What would you do about civil discourse, compromise, political polarization?
Sure. So during my tenure in the General Assembly, I am currently in my 5th term. I have developed an enormous amount of experience with working with colleagues, and especially those on the other side of the aisle. You cannot have solid, good policy unless you are listening to all interested parties and building towards a consensus. And as a Democrat, it's important to me to have the input from my Republican colleagues. I have a reputation in Springfield for somebody who is approachable, somebody who's willing to listen, somebody whose immediate reaction is not going to be to get into an argument with somebody. And this is incredibly important when you're developing complex policies. And not everyone understands complex issues and complex policies. Not every legislator understands, not every former legislator understands complex issues and complex policies, but that is part of the job. And you have to be able to understand that and build consensus with your Republican counterparts in this case. But on top of that, when you come home, and there are a number of legislators that I know do this, they ignore constituents that maybe have a varying point of view from them. And I engage with every single one of my constituents, and that is something that my constituents appreciate about me. When they go into a meeting, they know we're probably not going to walk away in agreement, but they respect and they appreciate that as their elected official, I sit down with them and I'm willing to listen to their perspective and what they have to say.
Thank you. And for the next question, shifting gears, our first respondent will be Sam Yingling. New topic. Floods, virus, droughts are becoming more frequent and severe, with severe impacts on both the economy and the environment. What positions would you support to address these issues?
So let me start off by saying climate change is real and it's caused by human activity. And now we have to live with the ramifications of climate change, and we have to work to develop solutions to mitigate the impacts of climate change. In the past 2 sessions, the Lake County House delegation has taken great steps towards addressing environmental impact in our county as a result of climate change. I was the lead negotiator on securing $122 million in stormwater infrastructure funds for Lake County. And the governor was just here the other week announcing that program and rolling out the first $30 million of those projects. And it is important to note that, when we're talking about building consensus and working together, is that my opponent was the only member of the Lake County House delegation who refused to sign on to a letter of advocacy requesting $122 million for our constituents and residents right here in Lake County. Those projects are going to start immediately, and they're going to change the lives of a lot of our constituents. Just a couple years ago, we had a massive flooding event in 2017 that displaced families, it displaced businesses, and it destroyed the quality of life for people. I am so happy that I was able to help secure that $122 million for direct reinvestment here in Lake County.
Thank you very much for that answer, and I will ask the same question of Mary Edley Allen, floods, fires, droughts. What can you do?
It's actually a very scary question when you even just posed it. But environmental issues are social justice issues, and we are in an environmental crisis. We need strong legislation that penalizes polluters, and we need to protect our air, water, and soil. I was proud to have a 100% rating from the Illinois Environmental Council when I served, and that is a conglomeration of over 100 environmental affiliates, including Faith in Place and Illinois Sierra Club. I carried and passed Bill for Sierra Club, HB 3105, that increased the penalties on illegal tree logging, and I will always vote and support and protect our air, water, and soil.
Thank you. We'll start now with a new question, and Mary Edley Allen will be the first responder. What is your position on gun control, firearms registration, and concealed carry for the state of Illinois?
Guns have just become to be so proficient in our society. I wish and I hope that we can come to the day where I don't have to do student-led drills for active gun shooting. It's one of the most difficult experiences as a teacher that I have to do. We need to just get bold and do strong legislation on all kinds of guns. I do support the Second Amendment, but over 74% of the population supports strong guns legislation on automatic weapons and these weapons of war, frankly. But again, I would love to get to that day where I don't have to do an active shooter drill with my students.
Thank you. Same question as Sam Yingling. Gun control, firearms registration, and concealed carry.
Yeah, gun violence is completely out of control in this country, in the state, and in our communities. I am proud to have the endorsement of Brady PAC, Giffords, and GPAC, the three largest gun safety organizations in the country. I supported licensing gun dealers in the state. I supported banning automatic weapons and semi-automatic weapons in the state, along with components to turn a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon. I supported and voted for the red flag laws, which allow for a court to intervene and seize firearms from people who are otherwise considered dangerous or who would use those firearms to do harm to other people. This past session, I supported the banning of so-called ghost guns, and these are all just first steps. And this is something that we are going to have to continue to grapple with the proliferation of deadly weapons on our street. There's, I was thinking about an article that I read about a month or so ago about a gunfight at the Gurney Portillo's. And I think that it is unbelievably disturbing that we cannot even consider taking our family out for a nice lunch or a nice dinner at a local Portillo's without fearing that our children are going to be caught in the crossfire of some gunfight. So we need to continue to do work. I am so proud of the work that I've done for gun safety, and I look forward to continuing.
Thank you so much. And we will put the next question to you, Mr. Yingling. A new question. What do you think the state of Illinois can do to address soaring inflation and the impact of rising goods and services on our residents?
I think that the biggest partner in addressing inflation and the cost of rising goods and services is going to be the federal government. The federal government has the tools and the resources in order to oversee monetary policy and help get inflation under control. In the state of Illinois, I was proud to have supported and voted for freezing the gas tax and eliminating the grocery tax to try and help our working families and everyday people just make ends meet. We are going to have to continue to address inflation as we move forward. But also, too, it's important to recognize that these inflationary factors are also affecting our lower income workers. They have less money to be able to absorb the inflation. And I am incredibly happy that, and incredibly honored that I had the opportunity to vote twice to raise the minimum wage for our working families. You can't talk about inflation and the impacts of inflation without recognizing that we have a whole segment of low-income earners who are disproportionately affected by inflation. And I think that is a point where my opponent and I differ. I voted twice to raise the minimum wage to help working families, and when she had the opportunity to raise the minimum wage, she voted no.
All right, same question. Maria Lee Allen, what do you have to say about soaring inflation and the cost of goods and services?
There are two different issues with inflation and the wages that are stagnant for employees. Inflation is a temporary, while very painful, cause for what's happening. The bigger issue is these big businesses that don't pay their fair share. I'm going back to these big companies that have an increase of their CEO pay in disproportionate levels to the average worker. I have some statistics that CEO pay since 1978 has increased over 940%. I don't know, but I don't think anyone here has gotten a 940% increase in their salary. The average worker has gotten about a 12% rate. So that disparity between the very, very wealthy and those of us that are hardworking has been increasing over time. So while we would address inflation, it would be a short-term fix. We need a long-term fix where big business pays their fair share into their communities and offers living wages. $15 an hour, frankly, isn't even enough at this day and age. I believe it needs to be closer to $24.
Okay, thank you. We are going to switch to a new question now. So first responder will be Mary Lee Allen. A question on healthcare. Why do you or do you not support providing healthcare coverage for all?
This is a really personal issue because I had to choose my position because of healthcare. I carry my children's healthcare, and it is 1/3 of my salary. Healthcare costs have just gone out of this world. And again, it's because of greedy insurance companies that want to make more and more money. We need to, healthcare should never, ever make someone go bankrupt. And it certainly should not be not accessible. Everyone should have at least the basic low level of medical availability. Another area that really needs to be taken a strong look at are pharmaceuticals. These pharmaceutical companies make billions of dollars off of their medication, yet we have seniors and low income having to make decisions between their medications and food. So this is something that has been addressed at the General Assembly. We did put a cap on the insulin, but there's so much more that we can do, especially for pharmaceutical prices.
Excellent. Same question to Mr. Yingling.
It is absolutely deplorable that in the wealthiest nation on the planet that we have people who have to choose between putting food on their table or paying for their prescription drugs. That is just so shameful. And we as a government, we as elected officials in the Illinois legislature, but also for those individuals who are elected in Congress, they have a moral responsibility to provide opportunities to lower healthcare costs and also provide those individuals who have difficulty getting access to healthcare coverage the ability to buy into a system, an affordable system that at the very least provides them a minimal level of coverage. We saw the attempts on this, starting in 2008 with the Affordable Care Act, and it was an incredible piece of legislation. It allowed people with pre-existing conditions to be able to remain on insurance. People were not priced out of it, but over the past 10 years, the Republicans in Congress have systematically dismantled the Affordable Care Act, and it is shameful. And now we have people in our communities who need access to medical care and they can't get it. At the state level, we need to continue to make efforts in reining in the cost of prescription drugs that are under our purview and expanding investment into community healthcare centers and other healthcare initiatives around the state.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Yangling, you'll be the first respondent to a new question now. Does Illinois need additional campaign reform? What do you suggest?
I have always been a longtime advocate of campaign finance reform. We have way too much money in politics. Quite frankly, it's gross. There is no reason why people should have to raise millions and millions of dollars in order to run for office. I'll use myself as an example. You know, when I was elected in 2012, as I talked about before, being the only openly LGBTQ legislator, nobody thought I could win. Nobody thought I could win, and again, I was so honored to be able to. I was so honored that the voters, elected me as the first LGBTQ legislator. But every election after that, the Republicans have come after me. The Republicans have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars against me, and I've been able to beat them every time. But this underscores a huge problem. Why are we spending millions and millions and millions of dollars in a state legislative race? In 2016, Bruce Rauner spent more money against me than some congressional races combined. And in the era of Citizens United, we will continue to be faced with this. And I support a constitutional amendment outlining money in politics and overturning Citizens United.
Okay, thank you. The same question to Maria Leal.
Campaign finance is something that really needs to be addressed at the federal level. We can do as much as we can at the state level. I remember when I was running for office and naive me went to my opponent and I said, how about if we just spend a certain amount of money, like $100,000, and let's see how we spend that money. And he actually said to me, you can't do that. There's dark money. And I was like, what's that? I learned very quickly. It's really unfortunate that we have to have this kind of underhanded, snide comments and snide type of campaigning, rather than just talking about the issues and what you're going to do for the people. I wish, I'm just idealistic at 60 years old that we can talk about issues and not have this negative campaigning. I would love to challenge my opponent right now to only use positive campaigning and work on the issues. But perhaps the comment will be dark money.
Thank you for the answer. We're going to go to a new question now. First respondent will be Mary Edley Allen. Lake County has a significant immigration population. Name some specific examples of how you have advocated for this population and how you plan to support the immigrant community.
I feel like this is a planted question for me because this is my jam. My students are all immigrants, and I've always had to be advocating for them. Here in Lake County, I'm not sure if people are aware, but I'm speaking to one of the reporters that there was a 23% population of Latino. That's amazing. That's a quarter percent. We are becoming more non-white than we are, more of colors, and our diversity makes us stronger. I was really proud to serve on one of the first committees, one of the first diversity committees in my school district, which came up with really strong language about different family structures, different cultures, and being respectful. And all of our staff members had to sign that and leave their ideals and ideologies at the door and work with all students and all family structures and all cultures and be respectful. I would love to see that type of strong language adopted in all school districts, because frankly, racism doesn't start when you're not born with racism. It's something that you're taught and becomes a seed that grows. So if we can get to the students when they're really young and understand that diversity is our strength, I think that we will be in a good place.
Thank you. Same question, Sam Yingling, how you would support our immigrant population?
So growing up in the Round Lake area, you know, Round Lake has a very large Latino population, and growing up in the Round Lake area and with my parents having a small local restaurant, you know, the immigrant community is nothing new to me. I grew up with a number of friends who came from mixed status households, and you know, seeing firsthand the opportunities that I had versus the opportunities that they had, they weren't equal. And I think, and that's unfair, and that should not be part of our system. You know, when Trump came into office, you know, he successfully weaponized anti-immigration rhetoric and, you know, helped galvanize intolerant people against the immigrant community. And if you recall, the United States is built upon the notion of immigration. One of the things that the state needs to be focused on, and now that we're on stronger financial footing, is making sure that we have access to healthcare opportunities for immigrant families, making sure that immigrant families have access to education, making sure that we increase our funding to higher education, which we did in the last budget year, and increasing our funding to the MAP grant, which is the Monetary Assistance Program. That is something that is incredibly helpful for not only everyone in the state, but specifically immigrant communities. I am so proud to work with ICER in Springfield and on a variety of different immigration-related pieces of policy, and I will continue to do that.
Thank you. Cutting it close there. We are trying to stick to 2 minutes each. We love it when you finish your sentence, but sometimes it is hard to finish your thought. I know. So thank you for trying. We're just trying to give equal time to everybody. So you will also get the next question, Mr. Yingling. You'll be the first responder. Do you believe parents have the right to be informed by school administration if their child changes his or her gender identity in school?
This is an issue that is part of the LGBT, obviously within the LGBTQ community. And it is an issue that is being weaponized by homophobic, transphobic individuals to suggest that young adults should not be able to have certain gender identity. And I find it disgusting. I find the increasing in transphobia within this culture to be intolerant. And as a member of the LGBTQ community, I'm not going to tolerate that. And I'm going to call it out for what it is. When you drag schools in to somehow trying to reveal a child's sexual identity to their parents, I think is a dog whistle. I think that any child who is going through the process of discovering their sexual orientation, their sexual identity, that is a very deep personal process, and that is something that many children struggle with. And we see LGBTQ youth being at higher risk than other youth for depression and suicide. So I'm going to push back on this notion of weaponizing the schools for political purposes to intervene within decisions of an LGBTQ youth.
Thank you. Same question to Mary Ed Leon.
There was a recent state senator from Michigan who made a fiery speech on the floor, and part of it was about how people who are different isn't the cause of our crumbling streets and our high cost of healthcare. I think this focus really is a diversion from the real issues. And let's be clear, public schools were created for all students, and they were created to protect students and their families. So if there's an issue with this, that's why we have private schools. That's where you can go if you have an issue with accepting of all students, of all cultures, of all backgrounds.
Okay, thank you. We'll have a new question for Mary Ed Leon. How would you balance economic development and infrastructure with environmental protections and sustainability?
The way that that's worded, it sounds like those are two separate issues that are mutually exclusive, and they really aren't. As long as we have all stakeholders at the table with the economic development and we have stakeholders from the environmental groups, it can happen. When I was in the legislature, there was the idea of the Route 53 extension, and it took a lot of work to get everyone on board, on the table, to have a discussion for a task force to look at how that can be developed properly. But there needs to be balance. You need to have all stakeholders at the table, and everyone needs to be heard. So it can be done. We don't have to sacrifice one for the other, but it does need to be thoughtful and with all stakeholders at the table.
Okay, thank you.
The two issues are not mutually exclusive, and we see this in a lot of local construction taking place right here in Lake County. I think a really great example of balancing construction and development with the environment is you don't have to go any further than the College of Lake County's campus in Grace Lake. They have one of the only Platinum LEED certified buildings in the country, in the state. And I would encourage, for those of you who have not been there, you've got to go check it out. It is on the cutting edge of innovation and really a beacon of what our future construction can look like, utilizing environmental qualities and smart construction techniques. If we, what Mary had said, she was talking about the Route 53 corridor. This is another really exciting opportunity where we can synergize open space and synergize environment with the needs for infrastructure and transportation. The future of transportation is going to be these new emerging technologies. And the technology I'd like to talk about is the construction of a hyperloop. We would have the ability to construct a hyperloop that would connect not only Lake County and the collar counties, but also O'Hare and Chicago, with limited to no impact on the environment, for a mass transit system that creates no emissions. And that would be I think that would be an incredibly innovative approach for Lake County, and I think that would be an incredibly innovative approach for the state of Illinois.
Thank you very much. The next question will go to Sam Yu. Cyber threats are on the rise in Illinois. Most recently, a cyber attack on Lincoln College in central Illinois is responsible for its closing. How will you address the issues and protect Illinois and Illinois businesses from future threats?
Cybercrime is absolutely on the rise, and it's an invisible threat. When we sit down at our computers, when we go about our daily life, we don't see the cybercrime taking place. It's not directly in front of us. But because of the troll farms that we have in Russia, in China, and other adversarial nations, this is arguably the most dangerous weapon that adversaries can use against the United States, use against its people, and use against our institutions. The state needs to ensure that it is providing logistical and financial support to institutions within the state in order to ensure that they have the appropriate and most up-to-date cybersecurity systems in place to fight against cybercrime. We're seeing this at a national level. The Biden administration has invested hundreds of millions of dollars. It will soon be approaching over $1 billion in investment in helping companies, institutions, and states around the nation be able to keep up with the ever-evolving cyber threats that we're experiencing. The example that was just used is something close to home, but that is just one example that we know about. This is happening to individuals, to corporations, and to institutions on a daily basis that maybe just don't make the news.
Thank you. Mary Lee Allen, cyber threats?
I believe the solution to this has just not been found, and stick with me for a second. Back in the day when TV first came out, there were commercials, and there were commercials of all types of things. We had cigarette commercials, we had alcoholic commercials, and over time we changed and we made regulations that said on Saturday mornings when most of our children are watching television, we will not have cigarette commercials, we will not have alcohol commercials. And this is something that can be done now with cyber activity. If there's the will, there is a way to do this, but it's going to be a really heavy lift. It can be done. I just believe that we haven't come up with people who are going to be brave and bold. I'm not sure if you all have heard about all of these different leaders from different cyber companies, Facebook. I can't think of them all off the top of my head because of not tech savvy, but they had come up with ideas that would protect students and children from the internet. That is just as dangerous as these cyber attacks on colleges. So where there's a will, there's a way, and we need to start serious legislation today.
Thank you. And we'll start with a new question. First responder will be Mary Edley Allen. I love audience questions. Why are you running for office? How can you do things differently in the Senate to help your community?
I'll be honest with you, sometimes I wonder why I run for office, but then when I knock on doors and I hear some of the conversations, I'm reminded of why I'm doing this. It's just really a natural progression for me to serve my community. As I said in the beginning, I started as a young mom serving as president of the PTO, created an education foundation. I was on the board of directors for Illinois Science Olympiad. I mean, I can go on and tell you all of my accolades and what I've done, but it's just a natural progression of who I am. I've always had a heart of service and a heart of serving my community, especially those that don't have a voice. Those are the people that need people in Springfield. The rich, they have lobbyists, but the homeless, those that are suffering with addiction and mental illness, they don't have lobbyists down there, and those are the people that I would like to be a voice for. So I'll be honest with you, sometimes I wonder why I'm running for office, especially with negative attacks and lies and things that are said about me. But I know who I am and why I'm running, and it's to serve the people, as I always have all of my life.
Thank you, Mr. Yingling. Why are you running for office, and how can you do things differently?
It has been the honor of my life to be able to serve the people of the 62nd District in the House for roughly the past 10 years. I feel as though the people I represent have helped me learn so much about them, about the world, about myself, but what on a daily basis, what I keep going back to is that everyone needs to have a voice. Everyone needs to have a voice, and they have a right to have a voice. And every day I wake up and I say to myself, okay, we've got to make sure that the people of the 62nd District have a voice. And as I have discussed with you about me as an individual being a member of the LGBTQ community, I know the need to have a voice. And there are people in Lake County, in our district, who don't have the ability to speak up and speak for themselves. And that is something that I hold very close to my heart, to be the voice for people who do not have a voice. Throughout my tenure in the House, I have developed the experience and the skill set to represent not only the 62nd District in the Senate, but also the 61st District in the Senate, which is the other half of the Senate District. And I look forward to having the ability to bring my strong advocacy for everyone of the Senate District, and specifically those people who do not have a voice.
Thank you. And Mr. Yingling, you will be the first respondent to our next question. We have time for 2, maybe 3, so let's see how it goes. The question is, how can you address mental health needs? How does the state help people with mental health issues?
This is such an important question. I'm so glad that mental health has come to the forefront, especially over the last several years. For decades, it's been taboo to talk about mental health. For decades, we would try and sweep mental health conditions under the rug. It was something you didn't talk about. If somebody in your family had a mental health condition, you didn't talk about it. And for the first time since I have been in the General Assembly, I am seeing a turning tide where people are willing to openly talk about the need for mental health treatment, for mental health coverage. We have so many people in our communities who suffer from depression, anxiety. Those are the largest conditions that people suffer from, and to be able to bring that out into the open and talk about it helps us move forward to address what are we going to do about it. Illinois in this past budget cycle has invested hundreds and hundreds of millions of additional dollars in mental health treatment. That is something that I'm incredibly proud of. I see within the LGBTQ community, specifically LGBTQ youth, the amount of trauma that many of them face, as they come of age, and the need to have access to mental health coverage. And that's just not isolated to LGBTQ youth. That's, that applies to our population as a whole, and we need to continue increasing investment there.
Thank you. Mary Lee Allen, mental health needs.
I have intimate knowledge of mental illness and substance use that are cousins. I have a child that struggles with mental illness, and I have experienced the disparity between those that have and have not, and it's a mile wide. I also had the opportunity to visit both Lake County Jail and Cook County Jail and visit the mental health units, which frankly are not that. Jails are not the place for people with mental illness. Starts at a young age, perhaps because I'm an elementary school teacher, but I think that speaking to children when they're young and talking about depression and mental illness is where this is at. I served with she was representative at the time, Karina Villa, but now is in the Senate. And she had a bill that was passed where school counselors need to talk to students about mental health and mental illness. It was only after she described the symptoms of depression did her student recognize that they were struggling with depression. They had no idea what this even was or had a word for it. So we do need to have more discussions around mental health and mental illness. Our brain is an organ just like our heart and our kidneys, and we need to treat it as such. We need different treatments because we've been treating the brain the same way for the last 100 years, just treating the symptoms. But it's through conversations and removing the stigma that will move this conversation forward.
Thank you so much. I think we can squeeze in 2 more questions. So second to last question to Mary Lee Allen. With ETO emissions happening in the Gurnee and Waukegan area, what legislation do you support to hold the companies accountable?
Polluters need to be held accountable. When I was in the House, we passed HB 3888 that had the strongest wording of eliminating ETO. However, unfortunately, it didn't pass in the Senate. Perhaps we'll get another opportunity to do that. But frankly, it's just really simple. Again, as an elementary school teacher, I keep it very simple. Polluters need to be stopped, and they need to have a penalty to stop them from doing it again.
Thank you. Same question, Sam Ely. What do you say about holding companies accountable?
Would you mind repeating the whole question?
Oh, absolutely. With ETO emissions happening in the Gurnee and Waukegan area, what legislation do you support to hold the companies accountable?
We have to hold polluters accountable. That's, beginning and the end of it. Mary had mentioned the ETO legislation that the Lake County House delegation passed a couple years ago. It was the most restrictive ETO legislation in the country, and we were able to muscle that out of the House. And I think it would be appropriate to say that it wasn't that it didn't go anywhere in the Senate. The Senate killed it. The Senate killed the ETO bill, and that ETO bill was needed for the health and safety of the people here in Lake County. And the ETO polluters were let off the hook because the Senate killed the bill. And if I go to the Senate, I am going to make sure that we revive that ETO bill so we can protect the health and safety of the people here in Lake County and around the state. We also face another pollution issue, anywhere from Zion to Waukegan. Most recently in the Clean Equitable Jobs Act is that, I was a lead negotiator with Representative Joyce Mason that is now forcing Exelon to pay for the nuclear waste they left behind in the city of Zion when they left. Additionally, the Lake County House delegation has been working together to clean up the coal ash plants that were left behind in Waukegan, 300 feet off the shore of Lake Michigan, which is the largest source of drinking water for millions of people.
Thank you very much. So, one more question. And did I skip the order there? I'm sorry if I skipped a respondent. But you are very flexible, and you've actually been answering the questions lickety split, so I'm keeping up with you here. The respondent again will be Mr. Yingling then. If you were a second respondent last time, that makes you first this time. So if there were a proposal for a new piece of infrastructure, such as road, bridge, etc., how would you evaluate the project to determine worth of implementation?
I would like to re-highlight the $122 million that I was the lead negotiator on in order to secure those funds for stormwater infrastructure. And the reason we were able to secure those funds and the reason we were able to secure that money is because there was a master plan in place. We worked with the Stormwater Management Commission of Lake County, who was able to provide us those projects, which would back up the funding. The same principle would apply with any other infrastructure funding. We're fortunate in Lake County that we do have coherent master plans, not only regionally, but countywide and by city. So when, as a legislator, annually or even twice a year, I meet with the various governmental bodies that I represent to say, all right, let's go through what your infrastructure needs are. What plans do you have in place? Do you have any shovel-ready infrastructure projects that just simply need to get funded? Where are you at with engineering? And that is the approach that I would take because, you know, once you get infrastructure money, you want to make sure that it goes directly to what is called a shovel-ready project, which means that's a project that can start construction immediately. But in terms of working with other local governmental bodies, that has to be an ongoing list. And it is something that is very well thought out. And it is often something that comes from the various engineering firms that work with our local governmental bodies.
Thank you. Yes, a second response from Marietta Lee Allen. Thank you.
We are extremely fortunate to live in Lake County because we have a very organized, systematic group of people who have a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year plan for our infrastructure. So when it comes time to having funds, we can go to those plans, lean on our experts that have done the engineering and the planning and say what projects can we do. I was really proud to work with Representative Didich to get a grade separation between 83 and 60. Governor came out when I was in office to present that project to be completed. The engineering has been done. Frankly, we have millions, if not billions of dollars worth of projects that are on the books. We just need the funding. That's where something like the gas tax would help out with our infrastructure. So we're really fortunate here in Lake County. I don't know if you all know how fortunate we are to have so many wonderful people that take care of the planning and engineering and have many, many projects ready to go. We just need the money to get it done.
Super, thank you very much. And that actually concludes our questions. Wish we had time for all of them because there are still some great ones in the bin here. But we're ready to go on now to closing remarks. If you're comfortable sitting there, that's great.
Okay.
Our first responder this time will be Sam Hingley.
Thank you very much. It has been an absolute honor of my life to be able to serve the people of the 62nd District. And it would be an absolute honor to serve the people of the 31st Senate District. This Senate seat is absolutely critical. We cannot afford to lose this Senate seat. I know firsthand what it is like to have to fight for your rights, and I know firsthand what it is like to have your rights deprived from you. And as I've done before in the past, and as I will continue to do, I am ready, willing, and able to continue fighting for the people of Lake County and fighting for the people of the state. And I assure everyone that all of our rights are under attack, or they soon will be under attack by the Trump Supreme Court. And I am ready and willing to take that fight head on. As I've said before, is the Republicans have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars against me over the years, and I have beat them every single time. We need to have the strongest, most qualified candidate running for the state Senate possible, because we cannot afford to lose the Senate seat.
Thank you. Closing statement from Marietta Lee Allen.
I will repeat some of what I said on the opening, that I have lived, served, and worked in this community for over 20 years. And while I agree that we need strength, I also believe that power needs to look different moving forward. We need to stop hitting people over the head with sticks and saying the beatings will continue till morale improves. We need to have new type of power that's more collaborative, more inclusive, and frankly, just a little softer. I worked extremely hard in my district. It was a 14+ Republican district. I wrote it within less than 2% with little to no funding from Speaker Madigan after I told him I wouldn't vote for him. So I worked across the aisle. I had the support of my Republican mayor in Libertyville. I also had the support of my Republican Chamber of Commerce president, who saw how hard I worked for our small businesses to getting them real solutions to real problems during COVID. So I will just let my life and my example lead the way. And I would really be honored to have your vote, those of the people that are here and those that are listening at home, on June 28th. Of all, whatever the case may be, please just go out and practice your right to vote. It's your voice and it's your power. And thank you.
Thank you very much. These two do earnestly seek your vote, and it does take all of us to make good government. I'd like to thank again the wonderful community partners that worked together to put this event together for these two candidates who seek your vote for the Illinois Senate District 31 Democratic primary. Round Lake Library is one of the sponsors. You can go there to register to vote. Also the Mariposas Women's Collective, Mano a Mano Family Resource Center, the NAACP, and WRLR. Thank you all for your part in putting together this wonderful evening. I know I always learn something. The audience questions are awesome. These two really do want to know what you are interested in because they do seek to serve you. And thank you so much to both of you.
Bueno, Eric, tu segunda noche ya terminamos, so gracias por sintonizar y cuéntanos algo que vas a llevar contigo, Eric.
Pues la verdad me quedo con todo lo que, de escuchar esta nueva propuesta, de escuchar todo lo que están esos candidatos y como dijo la candidata al final de cuentas es nuestro voto, es nuestra voz y lo que hicimos y lo que decimos es traer todo esto para la comunidad y esperemos que también nuestra comunidad se lo lleve, esté al pendiente de todo esto y sepa que su voz también es escuchada.
Sí, gracias y pues síganos aquí en Facebook, vamos a seguir promocionando las elecciones, la primaria va a ser el 28 de junio y por favor pasen la voz, compartan este video para que la gente esté educada y gracias por sintonizarnos. Hasta la próxima vez.
Gracias.